Hi YouTube, and welcome back to History for Sleep. Tonight, we travel to the heart of medieval Europe, where towering stone castles rise above forests, rivers, and distant villages. Long before modern cities, before electric lights and paved roads, these castles stood as symbols of power, protection, and survival. Behind their massive walls lived kings, nobles, soldiers, servants, and craftsmen. Yet among all those people was one figure most would barely notice: the castle guard. While lords attended feasts and rulers discussed the future of kingdoms, the guard spent his life watching from cold battlements high above the world below. His days began before sunrise and often ended long after everyone else had fallen asleep. He walked endless stone walls, climbed countless staircases, stood through freezing winters and violent storms, and spent long nights staring into darkness, searching for dangers that might never come. It was not a life of glory. It was not a life of wealth. It was a life of duty. Imagine yourself standing atop a castle wall nearly 700 years ago. The morning air is cold. Mist drifts across the valley below. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster calls from a small village. The kingdom is only beginning to wake, but you have already been awake for hours. Your eyes scan the horizon as the first rays of sunlight touch the forests beyond the castle. You listen carefully to every sound carried by the wind. A rider approaching from afar, a wagon traveling along the road, the howl of wolves deep within the woods. Every movement matters. Every shadow could mean something, because the safety of everyone inside these walls depends upon your vigilance. As the years pass, the guard becomes part of the castle itself. He learns every stone in the walls, every narrow staircase, every hidden passage and watchtower. He watches children grow into adults. He sees old kings die and new rulers take their place. Seasons come and go endlessly. Harsh winters cover the battlements in snow. Spring rains soak the courtyards below. Summer heat bakes the stone beneath his boots. Autumn winds scatter leaves across the kingdom. Through it all, the guard remains, always watching, always waiting, always ready. Yet the greatest challenge is not the cold. It is not the storms. It is not even the possibility of war. The greatest challenge is loneliness. While celebrations fill the great hall with music and laughter, the guard often stands alone beneath the stars. While families gather around warm fires, he patrols dark walls illuminated only by flickering torches. While travelers journey across the world, he remains at his post night after night, year after year. Few people remember his name. Fewer still understand the sacrifices he makes. Yet without him, the castle could not sleep peacefully. Over the course of this story, we will follow one castle guard from his first nervous days as a young recruit to his final years upon the walls. We will witness friendships, hardships, brutal winters, moments of fear, moments of courage, and decades of quiet service. We will explore what it truly meant to spend a lifetime protecting a medieval castle from dangers both real and imagined. So settle in, relax, and let the sounds of distant winds echo across ancient battlements. The torches are lit. The gates are closed. Night is approaching, and high above the sleeping kingdom, a lonely castle guard begins another watch. The year is 1348. The sun has only just begun to rise above the distant hills as a young boy walks along a muddy road leading toward a great stone castle. His boots are worn from travel. His cloak is thin against the morning chill. In his pocket, he carries little more than a small wooden token given to him by his father many years before. The castle appears enormous from a distance. Its towers rise high above the surrounding countryside, visible for miles in every direction. Smoke drifts from chimneys inside the walls. Banners flutter in the wind. To the boy, it looks less like a building and more like a mountain built by human hands. He has never seen anything so large, never seen walls so tall, never seen gates so strong. Every step toward it fills him with a mixture of excitement and fear. He knows that if he is accepted as a guard apprentice, his entire life will change. Behind him lies the small farming village where he grew up. Ahead lies a future he cannot yet imagine. As he approaches the outer gate, he joins a line of merchants, travelers, and farmers waiting to enter. Ox carts creak beneath heavy loads. Horses stamp their feet against the cold ground. Guards watch from above the gatehouse, their silhouettes dark against the morning sky. For the first time, the boy realizes that these men are not heroes from stories. They are ordinary people standing watch while everyone else begins their day. Their lives are spent on these walls. Their home is the castle. Their duty never ends. When the gates finally open, the boy steps forward. The sound of iron chains echoes through the air. Massive wooden doors slowly swing inward. Beyond them lies a crowded courtyard filled with activity. Blacksmiths hammer glowing metal. Servants carry barrels and baskets. Soldiers cross from one tower to another. Everywhere he looks, people are working. The castle is alive. Yet despite all the movement, one thing captures his attention above all else. High atop the battlements, standing alone against the morning sky, a guard silently watches the distant horizon. While everyone below rushes through their daily routines, that lone figure remains motionless. The boy does not know it yet, but someday he will stand in that exact place. Days pass quickly after the boy arrives. He is accepted as an apprentice and assigned to learn from one of the castle's older guards. The work is harder than he expected. Every morning begins before sunrise. Every day is filled with chores. He cleans weapons, carries supplies, polishes armor, and spends hours climbing staircases between towers. The castle seems even larger from the inside. Some days his legs ache so badly that he can barely walk. Yet he refuses to complain. Every task teaches him something new. Every lesson brings him closer to becoming a true guard. As autumn settles across the kingdom, the evenings grow colder. The days become shorter. One evening, after completing his duties, the boy is summoned by his mentor. The old guard says very little. He simply hands the boy a torch and gestures toward the battlements. Together they climb a narrow spiral staircase leading to the highest section of the outer wall. The wind is stronger here. Far below, the courtyard looks tiny. Beyond the castle stretches an endless landscape of forests, rivers, villages, and rolling hills fading into darkness. The sun has already disappeared. One by one, stars begin appearing overhead. The old guard explains that tonight the boy will experience his first watch. Not a full shift, only a few hours, but enough to understand the responsibility carried by every guard. At first the task seems easy. Nothing happens. The countryside remains quiet. The roads are empty. The only sounds are the wind and the occasional hoot of an owl somewhere beyond the walls. Yet as the hours pass, the boy begins to understand. Watching is not simply looking. It is noticing. A distant light in the forest. Movement along a road. Smoke rising where none should be. The guard must see what others miss. Must remain alert while the entire world sleeps. Near midnight, the castle bells ring softly in the distance. The old guard looks across the dark countryside and smiles faintly. Most nights are like this, he says. Quiet, peaceful, boring. The boy nods in agreement. Then the old guard adds something he will remember for the rest of his life. And that is exactly how we want it. Together they continue their watch beneath the stars while the kingdom sleeps safely behind them, unaware of the lonely figures standing guard above. The weeks slowly turn into months as the young apprentice settles into life within the castle. The excitement of arriving has faded, replaced by the reality of daily duty. Every morning begins before dawn when the castle bells echo through the darkness. While most people are still asleep beneath warm blankets, the apprentice is already climbing stone staircases with a torch in hand. The castle is far larger than he first imagined. Hidden corridors weave through thick walls. Narrow passages connect towers. Small guard rooms sit above gates and beside battlements. The apprentice spends countless hours learning every corner of the fortress. His mentor insists that a good guard must know the castle better than anyone else. If danger comes, the old guard explains, you won't have time to think. Your feet must already know where to go. Day after day, the apprentice walks the walls. He learns where rainwater gathers during storms. He learns which stones become slippery during winter frost. He learns how different parts of the countryside appear from each tower. Soon he can identify distant farms, rivers, and roads from memory alone. The castle slowly becomes less like a maze and more like a second home. Yet the work remains exhausting. Some days he climbs hundreds of steps carrying supplies between towers. Other days he helps repair sections of wall damaged by harsh weather. His hands become rough from labor. His shoulders grow stronger. The soft village boy who arrived months ago is slowly disappearing. In his place, a young guard is beginning to emerge. One afternoon, his mentor takes him to the highest watchtower in the castle. The climb seems endless. Higher and higher they ascend until finally they reach the top. The view steals the apprentice's breath away. Forests stretch to the horizon. Tiny villages appear like scattered toys below. Roads twist across the countryside like ribbons. For the first time, he truly understands why the castle was built here. From this height, almost nothing escapes notice. The old guard points toward the distant horizon and says quietly, "Out there is the world. Most people spend their lives traveling through it. We spend ours watching it. As winter approaches, the days grow shorter and colder. The apprentice has now been at the castle long enough to earn greater responsibilities. One evening his mentor informs him that he will participate in a full night watch for the first time. The news fills him with both pride and nervousness. Until now he has only assisted experienced guards. Tonight he will stand beside them as one of their own. As sunset fades behind the hills, servants light torches along the walls. The great gates close with a deep thunderous sound. Heavy iron bars are lowered into place. Slowly the castle prepares for sleep. Inside the great hall, laughter and music drift through the windows as nobles enjoy a feast. Warm light spills into the courtyard below. Yet high above on the battlements, the apprentice feels very far from the comfort and celebration taking place inside. The wind is cold. The darkness beyond the walls seems endless. Hours pass slowly. The stars move across the sky. The countryside becomes silent except for the occasional cry of an animal somewhere in the distance. At first, the apprentice struggles to remain focused. Nothing happens. Nothing changes. The temptation to relax becomes stronger with every passing hour. Then suddenly his mentor points toward the eastern road. Far away, barely visible in the darkness, a small light flickers between the trees. The apprentice immediately feels his heart race. Is it a traveler? A messenger? A threat? Together they watch carefully. Minutes pass. Eventually the light moves closer, revealing a lone rider carrying a lantern. A simple traveler. No danger at all. Yet the lesson is important. The old guard smiles slightly. Most threats are nothing, he says. But if you ignore them, someday one won't be. The apprentice nods and continues watching. By midnight frost covers the battlements. His fingers ache from the cold. His legs feel heavy. Yet he refuses to complain. As dawn finally approaches, pale light begins appearing beyond the eastern hills. The castle slowly wakes once more. Smoke rises from chimneys. Roosters call from distant farms. Another day begins. Exhausted but proud, the apprentice looks out across the countryside. For the first time, he no longer feels like a visitor. He feels like part of the castle itself. And deep down, he knows this is only the beginning of a very long journey. Winter arrives with little warning. 1 week the countryside is covered in golden autumn leaves. The next, dark clouds gather above the kingdom and cold winds sweep across the hills. The young guard has now spent more than a year inside the castle. He knows the walls. He knows the towers. He knows the daily rhythm of life within the fortress. Yet he is about to experience something entirely new. One evening, shortly before sunset, the sky begins to change. Heavy gray clouds roll across the horizon. Birds disappear into forests. Even the horses in the stables seem restless. The older guards notice immediately. A storm is coming. Not an ordinary storm, but one of the great winter tempests that occasionally strike the region. Preparations begin at once. Torches are secured. Loose equipment is moved indoors. Gates are inspected. Supplies are checked. The young guard spends the afternoon carrying barrels and helping reinforce doors throughout the castle. By nightfall, the storm arrives. The wind strikes first. Powerful gusts slam against the walls and howl through narrow passages. Rain follows shortly afterward. Sheets of water sweep across the battlements. Visibility disappears almost completely. Standing watch becomes difficult. Yet the guards remain at their posts. The young guard pulls his cloak tightly around himself and stares into the darkness beyond the walls. Every few moments lightning flashes across the countryside, briefly revealing forests, roads, and distant hills before darkness swallows them once more. Hours pass. The storm grows stronger. The young guard begins to understand why castle guards are respected. This is not glorious work. There are no cheering crowds, no heroic speeches, only cold rain, aching muscles, and endless responsibility. Yet despite the discomfort, he remains at his post. Because that is what a guard does. Near midnight, a bolt of lightning strikes somewhere beyond the forest. The flash illuminates the landscape for a split second. During that brief moment, the young guard notices something strange moving along a distant road. His heart immediately begins racing. For several tense minutes, he watches carefully. Eventually, another flash reveals the truth. It is only a broken wagon being dragged by the wind. Harmless. Still, his mentor nods approvingly. The apprentice saw something others might have missed. The storm continues until dawn. When the sun finally rises, the kingdom looks transformed. Branches cover the roads. Streams have overflowed. Fields are soaked with rain. Yet the castle remains standing. Strong. Unshaken. Just as it has for centuries. Only a few weeks after the great storm, winter tightens its grip upon the kingdom. Snow begins falling almost daily. The forests become white. Rivers freeze along their edges. Frost covers every stone of the castle each morning. For the young guard, even simple tasks become more difficult. The battlements are slippery. The wind cuts through clothing like a knife. Yet life continues. One evening, as darkness settles across the countryside, the young guard begins another watch atop the gatehouse. Snow drifts gently through the air. Visibility is poor. Most roads appear abandoned. Few travelers venture outside during such weather. Hours pass quietly. Then, shortly after midnight, movement appears on the southern road. At first it looks like nothing more than a shadow, but slowly it grows larger. A rider, alone, approaching through the snow. The young guard immediately alerts the other guards. Together they watch as the figure struggles toward the castle. The horse is exhausted. The rider leans heavily in the saddle. By the time he reaches the gate, both appear close to collapse. The guards quickly lower a rope basket and assist him inside. The man is a royal messenger carrying urgent news from a neighboring province. His journey has taken days through terrible weather. Had he failed to reach the castle, important warnings might never have arrived. As servants rush to help the exhausted traveler, the young guard watches quietly from above. For the first time, he realizes how important the castle truly is. It is not merely stone walls and towers. It is a place where roads meet, where messages arrive, where people seek safety, where lives depend upon those standing watch. Long after the messenger has been escorted inside, the young guard remains on the battlements. Snow continues falling softly around him. The kingdom below sleeps peacefully beneath a blanket of white. Somewhere in the distance wolves howl beyond the forest. The guard listens for a moment before returning his gaze to the horizon. The castle depends upon him now, and for the first time he feels worthy of the responsibility. Spring finally arrives after the long winter. Snow melts from the battlements. Rivers swell with fresh water. Green returns to the countryside. Farmers begin working their fields once again. The young guard welcomes the change more than anyone. Months of cold and darkness have tested his endurance. Now warm sunlight fills the castle courtyards. Birds nest among the towers. The kingdom feels alive again. Life settles into a peaceful routine. Days pass without incident. Travelers enter and leave through the gates. Merchants bring goods from distant towns. Children play in the courtyard. The young guard spends countless hours patrolling the walls. At first he finds the calm somewhat disappointing. He imagined a guard's life would be filled with action and excitement. Instead, most days pass quietly. Yet his mentor sees things differently. One afternoon they stand together atop the western battlements watching farmers work far below. The old guard smiles and says, "If nothing happens, we are doing our job well." The young guard thinks about those words for a long time. He begins noticing details he once ignored. The peaceful roads, the thriving villages, the lack of fear among travelers. None of these things happen by accident. The castle provides stability. Its presence alone discourages trouble. The guard's work may seem invisible, but it matters. Over time, he starts taking pride in the quiet days. Every peaceful sunset feels like a victory. Every uneventful watch means the people below can sleep safely. Slowly, his understanding of duty begins to mature. One evening near the end of spring, a lone traveler appears shortly before sunset. Nothing about him seems unusual at first. He wears a dark cloak and carries little luggage. Yet something about his behavior catches the attention of the guards. He avoids conversation. He studies the walls carefully. His eyes constantly move from tower to tower. The young guard notices this immediately. While other travelers enter the castle without concern, this man seems far more interested in observing the fortress itself. The guard remembers the lessons taught by his mentor. Watch carefully. Notice what others miss. He quietly reports his observations. The older guards decide to keep the traveler under observation. Throughout the evening, the stranger remains inside the castle. He visits the market area, speaks with several merchants, walks near important buildings. Nothing illegal, nothing threatening, yet something still feels wrong. By midnight, the man quietly leaves through the gates and disappears into the darkness. The following morning, news arrives from a neighboring lord. A known spy has been traveling through the region gathering information about local castles and defenses. The description matches the stranger perfectly. The young guard feels a chill run through him. Had he ignored his instincts, nobody would have noticed. His mentor congratulates him. Not because he caught the spy. The man escaped without causing harm. But because he paid attention. Because he remained alert. Because he fulfilled the true purpose of a guard. That evening, the young man stands atop the battlements watching the sun set beyond the hills. For the first time, he no longer feels like an apprentice pretending to be a guard. He feels like a real guardian of the castle. And although many years still lie ahead, his journey has truly begun. Several years pass. The young guard is no longer the nervous apprentice who first arrived at the castle gates. He has become a trusted member of the garrison. His shoulders are broader, his movements more confident. New apprentices now arrive at the castle and look at him the same way he once looked at the older guards. Yet despite his growing experience, true danger remains rare. Most days are peaceful. Most watches pass without incident. Then one summer evening, everything changes. The sun is setting behind distant hills when a rider arrives at full speed. His horse is exhausted. Dust covers his clothing. The man carries urgent news from a neighboring village. A group of armed bandits has been raiding farms throughout the region. Several homes have already been burned. Livestock stolen. Travelers attacked. The castle immediately begins preparing for trouble. Gates are reinforced. Additional guards are assigned to the walls. Supplies are gathered. For the first time since arriving years ago, the young guard feels genuine tension spreading through the fortress. As darkness falls, every shadow beyond the walls seems more threatening. Every sound in the forest draws attention. The night becomes long and uncomfortable. Hours pass. Then shortly before dawn, movement appears near the tree line. Several figures emerge from the darkness. More shapes follow behind them. The guards quickly sound the alarm. Bells ring across the castle. Torches flare to life. Yet as the figures move closer, the truth becomes clear. They are not bandits. They are frightened villagers seeking shelter. Entire families arrive carrying what little they manage to save. The young guard helps open the gates and watches as exhausted men, women, and children enter the safety of the castle. For the first time, he witnesses what the fortress truly represents. Not power, not wealth, protection. The villagers remain inside the castle for several days. Stories of burned farms and stolen supplies spread throughout the fortress. Everyone knows the bandits are somewhere nearby. No one knows exactly where. The tension grows with each passing night. Then, during a moonless evening, the alarm bells suddenly ring. The young guard rushes to the battlements. Below, torches move through the darkness near the outer road. This time there is no mistake. Armed men are approaching. The guards immediately prepare for defense. Archers take positions along the walls. Gates are secured. Every watchtower becomes alert. The young guard grips his spear while staring into the darkness. His heart pounds in his chest. This is the moment every guard trains for, yet hopes never arrives. As the torchlights move closer, the bandits appear. But something unexpected happens. The moment they see the fully prepared castle walls illuminated by dozens of torches and guarded by armed soldiers, they hesitate. They expected frightened villagers, not a fortified castle ready for battle. Minutes later, they begin retreating into the darkness. No battle occurs. No heroic charge takes place. Yet the young guard learns one of the most important lessons of his life. A castle's greatest weapon is often its presence alone. By sunrise, the danger has passed. The villagers cheer. The guards relax. And the young guard understands that sometimes preventing a fight is a greater victory than winning one. Years continue to pass. The young guard has now entered adulthood. The kingdom remains peaceful, but life upon the walls is never easy. One winter proves harsher than any in living memory. Snow falls week after week. Roads disappear beneath deep drifts. Rivers freeze solid. Supplies arrive slowly. The castle becomes isolated from much of the outside world. During one particularly brutal night, the guard begins a watch atop the northern tower. The wind is so cold it feels as though it could freeze the air itself. Snow swirls endlessly through the darkness. Visibility is almost non-existent. Yet abandoning the watch is unthinkable. The guard pulls his cloak tighter and continues scanning the horizon. Hours pass with agonizing slowness. Ice forms along the battlements. His boots grow stiff. His hands ache despite thick gloves. Somewhere below, warm fires burn inside the great hall. Music drifts faintly through the stone walls. Yet the guard remains alone above it all, standing watch while everyone else sleeps. As midnight passes, he realizes something strange. He no longer resents the loneliness. In fact, he has begun to understand it. The quiet has become familiar. The stars, the wind, and the distant forests have become companions of their own. The castle feels less like a workplace and more like home. Late one night during that same winter, the guard notices movement near the frozen forest edge. At first he assumes it is a traveler, but as the shapes emerge into the moonlight, he sees a pack of wolves. Their dark forms move silently across the snow-covered landscape. There are more than he has ever seen together before. Hunger has driven them closer to human settlements than usual. The wolves circle abandoned farm buildings outside the castle walls. Their howls echo across the frozen countryside. The sound sends chills through everyone who hears it. For hours, the guard watches the pack. Not because they threaten the castle itself, but because he understands something important. Beyond these walls, nature remains powerful and unforgiving. The castle provides safety, but the world outside remains wild. Just before dawn, the wolves disappear back into the forest. The guard watches them vanish among the trees. The kingdom awakens shortly afterward. Most people never learn about the wolves. They sleep peacefully because someone remained awake to observe what lurked beyond the walls. More years pass. The guard is now one of the most respected men in the garrison. His hair has begun showing the first hints of gray. His face carries the weathered appearance of someone who has spent countless seasons outdoors. One spring morning, a young boy arrives at the castle seeking work as an apprentice guard. The sight immediately reminds him of himself many years earlier. The nervous expression, the excitement, the uncertainty. The boy seems overwhelmed by the size of the fortress. The older guard cannot help but smile. He remembers standing in that exact position long ago. Soon he is assigned as the apprentice's mentor. Together they walk the walls, climb the towers, learn the routines of castle life. The apprentice asks endless questions, some intelligent, some amusing. The guard answers patiently. Each lesson brings back memories he thought he had forgotten. Slowly he realizes that time has changed his role. He is no longer the student. He has become the teacher. One evening the guard takes the apprentice to the highest watchtower. The same tower where he once received lessons from his own mentor decades earlier. Together they watch the sun disappear beyond the distant hills. The apprentice expects stories about battles and heroic deeds. Instead, the guard teaches something very different. He explains that most of a guard's life is not spent fighting enemies. It is spent watching, waiting, remaining patient, paying attention when everyone else becomes distracted. At first, the apprentice seems disappointed. But as darkness settles across the kingdom, he begins understanding. The guard points toward distant villages glowing softly in the night. Those people are sleeping peacefully because someone is awake. The apprentice remains silent. For the first time, he sees the profession differently, not as a path to glory, but as a responsibility, a calling, a quiet service to others. The guard sees recognition in the boy's eyes and realizes the lesson has landed. The castle experiences a rare period of celebration when a grand tournament is announced. Knights, nobles, merchants, and entertainers travel from across the kingdom. For weeks, the roads become crowded with visitors. Colorful banners decorate the walls. Music fills the courtyards. Markets overflow with goods from distant lands. The castle has never seemed more alive. Yet while everyone else celebrates, the guards remain busy. Crowds bring opportunity but also risk. The experienced guard spends long hours supervising entrances and watching unfamiliar faces. Day after day, he patrols among thousands of visitors. He observes arguments before they become fights, notices suspicious behavior, helps lost travelers find their way. The work is exhausting, yet it allows him to witness a side of the kingdom rarely seen from the battlements. For a brief moment, the castle becomes the center of the entire realm. Eventually, the tournament ends. One by one, the visitors depart. Merchants pack their wagons. Knights ride away. Musicians disappear down distant roads. Within days, the castle becomes quiet again. The sudden silence feels strange after so much activity. One evening, the guard climbs to the highest battlement and looks out across the countryside. The roads are empty once more. The forests stand silent beneath the setting sun. The apprentice joins him. Together they watch the kingdom settle back into its familiar rhythm. The younger boy remarks that the castle feels lonely now. The older guard smiles. Perhaps, he replies, but this is the castle I know best. As darkness falls and the first stars appear overhead, the guard begins another watch. The celebration is over. The crowds are gone. Yet his duty remains exactly the same as it has for decades. To stand upon the walls, to watch the horizon, and to protect the kingdom while it sleeps. Many years had passed since the young apprentice first walked through the castle gates. The kingdom had enjoyed a long period of peace, and for a while it seemed as though those peaceful years might continue forever. Yet peace has a strange way of making people forget how fragile it truly is. It begins with whispers. Merchants arriving from distant towns speak of disagreements between neighboring lords. Travelers tell stories heard at roadside inns. Messengers ride more frequently than before. None of the rumors seem important on their own. Yet together they form a pattern. The castle guard notices it long before most people do. After decades spent observing the world from high walls, he has learned to recognize small changes. The roads feel different. The mood of travelers feels different. Even the conversations in the courtyard carry a new sense of uncertainty. As summer slowly fades into autumn, preparations quietly begin. Blacksmiths work longer hours. Additional supplies arrive through the gates. Archers spend more time training in the practice yard. The guard watches it all from the battlements. Every day the castle grows slightly more alert, slightly more cautious. Yet no enemy appears. Weeks pass, then months. The rumors continue spreading. Some say armies are gathering beyond the mountains. Others claim neighboring kingdoms are preparing for conflict. No one knows the truth. The uncertainty itself becomes exhausting. Each night the guard climbs the walls and scans the horizon beneath the stars. Sometimes he wonders whether danger is truly coming or whether fear itself has become the enemy. Yet regardless of what happens, his duty remains unchanged. Watch, wait, endure. And so he continues his endless patrols while the kingdom below waits anxiously for answers. By winter, the rumors have become impossible to ignore. Snow covers the countryside while news continues arriving from distant regions. Some villages report seeing armed patrols near borders. Others claim entire companies of soldiers have marched across important roads. The castle itself remains untouched, yet the atmosphere has changed completely. Even ordinary tasks now feel heavier. The guard notices worried expressions among merchants. He hears concerned conversations in the marketplace. For the first time in many years, people begin asking whether the castle walls are strong enough. During one particularly cold evening, the guard begins a watch atop the highest tower. Snow drifts through the darkness. Below, the kingdom sleeps uneasily. Somewhere beyond the horizon, events are unfolding that nobody fully understands. Yet from his position above the world, the guard feels strangely calm. He has spent decades preparing for uncertainty. Storms taught him patience. Long watches taught him discipline. Loneliness taught him endurance. Whether war comes or not, he knows he will remain at his post. As midnight approaches, he looks across the frozen landscape and realizes something important. The purpose of a guard is not to control the future. It is to remain steady while others fear it. That thought stays with him until dawn breaks over the snow-covered kingdom. Spring finally arrives, and with it comes the event many feared. One afternoon, a rider appears at the castle gates. His horse is exhausted. His clothing is covered in dust. Before even dismounting, he demands to speak with the lord of the castle. Within hours, bells ring throughout the fortress. The alarm echoes across courtyards and towers. Guards rush to their positions. Gates are secured. Archers gather along the walls. The old guard feels a familiar tension settle over the castle. Yet this time something is different. He is no longer the young man experiencing his first emergency. Decades of experience guide his every action. He knows exactly where to stand, exactly what to watch, exactly how to remain calm while others panic. Throughout the afternoon, the castle prepares for a possible attack. Reports suggest armed forces may be moving through the region. Nobody knows whether they will come here or pass elsewhere. The uncertainty creates an atmosphere unlike anything the younger guards have ever experienced. The old guard spends hours walking the battlements, speaking quietly with nervous soldiers and apprentices. His calm presence alone helps steady them. As evening approaches, everyone waits. Darkness falls. Torches illuminate the walls. The countryside beyond the castle disappears into shadow. Every distant movement attracts attention. Every sound causes heads to turn. Hours pass, then more hours. Yet no enemy appears. Midnight comes and goes. Still nothing. The old guard continues watching from the battlements. Beside him stand younger soldiers expecting battle at any moment. Gradually they begin to understand a truth he learned long ago. Most of a guard's life is spent preparing for events that never happen. Near dawn, new riders arrive carrying updated information. The threat has passed elsewhere. No army is approaching the castle. No battle will take place. Relief spreads throughout the fortress. Some guards laugh. Others complain about losing sleep. The old guard simply smiles. To him, this outcome feels like a victory. The castle remained prepared. The people remained safe. And once again, disaster was avoided without bloodshed. As sunrise paints the horizon gold, he realizes this may have been the final great alarm of his career. The years continue flowing forward like a river that never stops. The guard is now an old man. His hair has turned white. His beard carries the color of winter snow. Climbing the endless staircases takes longer than it once did. Yet every morning he still performs his duties. The younger guards often offer assistance, but he politely refuses whenever possible. The castle has been his home for most of his life. Walking its walls feels as natural as breathing. Sometimes he pauses atop a tower and remembers the boy he once was. The frightened apprentice standing before the gates. The young man surviving his first storm. The experienced guard mentoring others. Entire decades seem to pass through his thoughts in a matter of moments. Below, new generations live their lives. Children become adults. Apprentices become veterans. Lords come and go. Yet the castle remains. Strong. Unchanging. Eternal. Watching over it all. One evening near the end of summer, the old guard finds himself standing atop the western battlements watching the sunset. The sky glows orange and gold. Long shadows stretch across the valley below. Beside him stands the apprentice who has become his closest student. Together they watch the countryside in silence. Eventually the apprentice asks whether he ever regrets spending so much of his life upon these walls. The old guard thinks for a long time before answering. He remembers cold winters, lonely nights, endless hours of watch duty. Yet he also remembers friendships, purpose, and the satisfaction of protecting others. Finally he smiles and shakes his head. No, he does not regret it. The castle gave his life meaning. The walls became his home. The kingdom became his responsibility. As the sun slowly disappears beyond the horizon, he realizes that his own journey is nearing its end. Strangely, the thought brings peace rather than sadness. Autumn returned to the kingdom one final time. The forests beyond the castle walls glowed with shades of gold, orange, and crimson. Cool winds swept across the battlements each evening, carrying with them the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke from villages scattered across the countryside. The old guard stood atop the western wall and watched the sunset as he had done thousands of times before. Yet this evening felt different. Perhaps it was the way the fading sunlight illuminated the stone towers. Perhaps it was the quiet stillness hanging over the valley below. Or perhaps, deep inside, he simply knew that his long journey was finally nearing its end. More than 50 years had passed since he first walked through the castle gates as a frightened boy. Entire generations had lived and died during that time. Lords had ruled and been buried. Children had grown into adults and then into grandparents. Seasons had come and gone so many times that he could scarcely count them anymore. Yet the castle remained. Its walls still stood strong against wind and weather. Its towers still rose proudly above the kingdom. And every stone seemed to carry a memory. The old guard spent much of the day wandering through the fortress. Not because he had duties to perform, but because he wished to see everything one last time. He walked through quiet courtyards where he had once trained with wooden swords. He visited the gatehouse where he had stood countless watches. He climbed familiar staircases worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Everywhere he looked, memories followed him. He remembered his first winter. He remembered the terrible storms. He remembered nights spent staring into darkness while snow drifted across the walls. He remembered helping frightened villagers find shelter during times of danger. He remembered the excitement of festivals, the sorrow of funerals, the arrival of messengers carrying urgent news, and the long, peaceful years when nothing happened at all. Most of all, he remembered the people. His old mentor had been gone for many years now. Yet the old guard could still hear his voice whenever he walked the battlements. He remembered the lessons, the patience, the wisdom, the countless nights spent standing beneath the stars while learning what it truly meant to protect others. As evening approached, the old guard made a decision. He would perform one final watch. The younger guards offered to accompany him, but he politely declined. This was something he wished to do alone. Slowly he climbed the spiral staircase leading toward the highest tower. The journey took longer than it once had. His legs were no longer strong. His breathing was slower. Yet he continued upward, step after step, hand resting against the ancient stone wall. At last he emerged onto the battlements. The view stretched endlessly before him. Forests covered distant hills. Rivers shimmered beneath the fading sunlight. Tiny villages sent thin trails of smoke into the evening sky. Roads wound across the countryside exactly as they had when he first arrived as a boy. For a long time he simply stood there, watching, listening, remembering. As darkness slowly settled across the kingdom, torches flickered to life within the castle below. One by one, stars appeared overhead. The moon rose above the forests. The world became quiet. Hours passed. The old guard remained at his post. No enemies appeared. No alarms sounded. No messengers arrived. It was simply another peaceful night. And somehow that felt perfect. The kingdom was safe. The castle was strong. The people slept peacefully in their homes. Everything he had spent his life protecting remained exactly as it should be. Near dawn, he looked eastward and watched the first light of morning slowly appear beyond the horizon. Golden sunlight spread across the valleys. Mist drifted above rivers. Birds began singing in distant forests. The kingdom awoke to another peaceful day. And the old guard smiled. It was the most beautiful sunrise he had ever seen. The following weeks passed quietly. The old guard no longer climbed the walls every day. Instead, he spent his time walking through the castle, speaking with old friends and sharing stories with younger guards who eagerly listened to his experiences. Many of them had never known the castle without him. To them, he seemed almost as permanent as the fortress itself. The apprentice he had trained years earlier was now a respected guard in his own right. Strong, capable, trusted by everyone. One afternoon, as autumn leaves drifted across the courtyard, the old guard handed him a small object. It was nothing valuable, simply an old wooden token. The same token he had carried when he first arrived at the castle more than half a century earlier. The apprentice looked surprised. The old guard smiled. "Every watch must eventually end," he said quietly. "And every guard must someday pass the duty to another." The apprentice understood immediately. Neither man spoke for several moments. Words were unnecessary. The castle bells echoed softly in the distance. Above them, banners moved gently in the wind. Life continued exactly as it always had. Days later, the old guard passed away peacefully in his sleep. There was no dramatic ending, no great battle, no final alarm, only silence, the same quiet that had accompanied so much of his life. News spread throughout the castle quickly. Servants lowered their heads when they heard. Soldiers spoke softly among themselves. Even the lord of the castle paused to pay his respects. For decades, the old guard had been a familiar presence upon the walls, a constant figure watching over the kingdom through storms, winters, celebrations, and peaceful years alike. Now he was gone. A small ceremony was held within the castle grounds. Nothing extravagant, nothing grand, exactly as he would have wanted. Guards lined the walls in silence. The castle bells rang slowly. Autumn winds carried fallen leaves across the courtyard. Beyond the walls, the countryside remained peaceful beneath a clear blue sky. When the ceremony ended, the apprentice climbed the battlements alone. The same battlements where he had once received lessons from his mentor. The same battlements where countless watches had been kept. The same battlements where an old guard had spent most of his life. As evening approached, he reached the highest tower and looked out across the kingdom. The forest stretched toward the horizon. The villages rested quietly below. The roads wound through the valleys exactly as they always had. For a moment he imagined the old guard standing beside him, watching, waiting, protecting. Then the castle bells announced the beginning of another night's watch. The apprentice took a deep breath and stepped forward. Below him, thousands of people prepared for sleep. Families gathered around fires. Travelers rested in inns. Children drifted into dreams. None of them thought about the guards standing upon the walls. And that was exactly the point. The greatest success of a castle guard was often invisible. If people felt safe enough to forget about danger, then the guard had done his job well. The sun disappeared beyond the horizon. Darkness settled across the kingdom. Torches illuminated the ancient stone walls. And high above the sleeping world, a new guard began his watch. The old guard was gone, but his duty remained. His lessons remained. His legacy remained. Because castles are not remembered only for their kings, battles, or treasures. They are remembered for the countless ordinary people who devoted their lives to protecting them. The winds continued to blow across the battlements. The stars appeared overhead. The kingdom slept peacefully. And somewhere among the ancient stones of the castle, the memory of a lonely guard endured. Sleep well. And thank you for joining us on this journey through the lonely life of a medieval castle guard. Until next time, good night.